Okay, I have 4:15. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nobody took a name. Roll call, Sam Martin, Martha Eldridge,
Here.
and Rick Morgan's here. Earlier we had a non-public session upstairs, which was under RSA 91A32D, titled Acquisition. I make a motion we seal those minutes.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Public input. Anybody? Sure.
I'd just like everyone to know that there is a fishing game meeting on Wednesday in Berlin at 1 p.m. That I plan on attending, and just ask them if they've received the letter from the Ossipee Board of Selectmen. Ask if they have any commentary on that letter. I also would like them to provide a detailed accounting of where they received those monies to build that boat launch, because it does actually matter where they got that money and how they can enforce rules. I would like to know if they're going to force me to file a right-to-know request to get that information or not. I also would like to get some formalized guidance on how those facilities are supposed to be used, because I had different information from different people that you can park on the road and then walk in. You can park there, but you have to have a boat. I just want to know exactly what the rules are so that it's extremely clear. I also would like them to tell me if they've ever been challenged on this before in terms of the no swimming sign specifically, whereas the DES and other state agencies and common law says that public water, that swimming is a reasonable and lawful use of public water. I would like to know how they were able to pass that administrative rule, since they don't have jurisdiction over the water specifically. So those are the answers that I'm hoping to get, and I'll let you know.
Good luck. I think there's some valid questions here. So, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, Rick, continuing on the discussion we had last week with regards to trying to promote business within the town of Ossipee. I've approached a number of existing businessmen because a number of things that are being talked about are geared towards bringing new business to town. And the common thread that I heard from existing businessmen is the town providing more right up front guidance as to how to get through the process of either getting planning board approval or zoning board approval, or understanding how the zoning ordinance applies to what they currently have and what they could try to do in the future. And when we took the conversation a little bit further, they thought it would be handy as if the selectmen worked in conjunction with both boards and our code enforcement officers to having potential checklist. Like, here's your initial contact person, whether it's Steve or whoever, start the conversation, and then getting the guidance as to what kind of materials they need to have at the minimum so that conversations can be had on specifics before they make a decision to retain an engineer or a licensed land surveyor or whoever to help them negotiate the process, and understanding how long it might take too, in terms of, what are reasonable time frames, and then what are unreasonable time frames from my perspective for the town to help somebody. My background is dealing with multiple towns, multiple boards, and what I had been taught was the town's code enforcement officer, zoning board, planning board, they're there to help facilitate, whether it's an existing taxpayer or a potential taxpayer, help them understand the town's own voter-approved regulations or other ordinances that might be in place, and as much as they can, and not be perceived as a potential hindrance or a gatekeeper. And I think that maybe in this town, the conversations need to be had between the two boards, I'm hearing that they've got an upcoming joint meeting to review a specific application to help eliminate maybe some of the confusion and crosstalk, that maybe those kinds of things need to be looked at as being more a matter of course rather than an exception.
I don't disagree with the thing that you said. We do currently have a checklist. One of the things that I believe, whether it was for a business, certainly, but even for a homeowner, somebody who wants and needs to go through that process, whether it's simply coming in and getting a building permit, whether it's somebody that needs a variance or site plan approval in the case of businesses, I think it is incumbent upon town government as a whole to help that individual, whether it's a business again or a residential, through what processes need to happen. I don't think we do that well. I truly don't. I think that if I look at, how do I say this nicely? If I look at the conduct of some of the public meetings, they have been less than, I believe, desirable in promoting the town of Ossipee as being pro anything. That being said, they are independent elected boards, which we have representatives on and have done, I think, as best we can to try to mold and participate in those boards. Using the planning board as an example, the only reason those 3 pro-business changes were made to the town zoning ordinance is because the Board of Selectmen went to the planning board and basically gave them an ultimatum. Either they were going to put them on or we were going to put them on with a petition, and we were going to be the first 3 signatures. That shouldn't have to be that way. I think that from a planning, zoning, and certainly from a town government standpoint, everybody ought to be working in the same direction. If you've got a magic wand and can help us figure out how that happens, please, please, please use it. I think, and one of the things that I look forward to have happening, I think that now that we have a very active economic development committee on board, I'm hoping that that is going to somewhat morph into them, in the sense that I believe, and Ash and I have had this conversation, in this day and age, I think the town of Ossipee needs to market itself. We need to be out there not only saying to those businesses, you're welcome, but going out and actively recruiting them. I would be really surprised if you as a business owner walked into a city, whether it's Dover or Manchester or Nashua, that there's not somebody there that would grab you, take you out to lunch and say, these are the strong points of why we think you should consider locating here. I would be amazed if that doesn't happen. I know it doesn't happen here. I think the town has made some really, really good steps by adopting the tax credits, by doing the economic revitalization zones. I think we've taken some really good steps to put us in a very competitive advantage compared to some of the towns around us who chose not to participate in that. That's all well and good, but now your point about the billboards, which I think was extremely valid. We've done those things. Now we need to get that word out there that we've done those things and say to those businesses, please come, take a look, and consider coming to Ossipee. Ash.
And on the same subject, while that's obviously what we want to do is recruit some businesses, get them in here, it helps our tax base, so on and so forth. It's also about the current business owners that are here in town. I like to think I'm somewhat of an intelligent individual, and I've gone through the process in various ways over the last couple of years, and this one has certainly got me. I feel like having this joint meeting, they said it has happened before, probably 20, 25 years ago, and it's like, okay, of course I'm going to do this, and now it's this big to-do. Even going through this process, the variance process, which I had never done before without an engineer, and I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. We'll do this, we'll learn along the way. I went to the planning board first, brought the file of a particular property and said, there is a site plan. And I laid it out and I said, I'd really like to know if this board considers this as an acceptable site plan already in file. And one of those, and I was just there, informal, no binding on either side. One of the board members got up, walked over, and like threw the site plan around, the drawing that was there, whether it's relevant or irrelevant to the property currently, threw it around, that's not a site plan, that's not a site plan. Went back to his seat, and I said, well, that's why I'm here. And one of them, another board member says, well, there's no signatures. And I know, being here my whole life, and I've looked through these files, there are site plans that are written on napkins. I mean, it's literally 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, hand-drawn, nothing to scale. And to save myself time, because I feel our planning board likes to say no based on gotchas, small technical gotchas, I said, you know what, I'm just going to submit a full site plan and start completely from scratch, which shouldn't have been the way. I was asking them for help and what I need to do, and I walked out of there more confused and like, you know what, I'm going to get an array of bullets if I submit this plan. I'm just going to submit a new one. So with the variance, what's hard is that, so that's site plan side, planning board. With the zoning board, what's difficult is that it's parajudicial. You can't go in there, and I learned this by going in there and being like, hey, I'm trying to do this. This is what I'd like to do. Is this acceptable? And they said, we can't talk to you about it. And I said, okay, you know, unless if I pick one of them and say, I need you to help me, they'll say, I'm going to recuse myself from any voting. And technically, I still shouldn't even talk about that. So I think to help current businesses, and of course the new businesses coming into town, I think it would be wise to find someone who has done variances and site plan reviews, been on the board and understand how it works, to be a part of whether it's the EDC or some sort of liaison between business owner and these boards, because it's brutal going in there. I mean, I've been to hundreds over the last 3 years, and I roll my eyes and shake my head, and then I go in front of them, and it's a terrible experience.
Listen,
As a layman.
I myself needed a variance on my own property. This was 20 years ago. And when I left the room, I literally felt like I'd been through an inquisition. Seriously, I get it. I've been there. From our standpoint here, this board, the sad truth of it is they are independently elected people who, I believe at times, some of them, not all of them certainly, and I don't want to portray that I am, they don't put themselves out there in a good light representing the town of Ossipee. They are elected. People need to, you know, the old adage, sometimes we get the government we deserve. People need to run. People who see the way, you know, and listen, Ed tapes these meetings. Watch them. Anybody that has an interest in watching the way those meetings are conducted and the way that people conduct themselves have the ability to do that. They don't even have to go to the meeting. I agree with everything you're saying. I guess I'm at a bit of a loss as to how we change it. I think the avenue, and if you can come up with somebody who knows the process that would operate as that, I think it's a great idea to have somebody who knows the process and can help folks navigate that system. I don't know how you do that. With some of the folks that are on that elected, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you reason with them.
As we discussed last week, getting the baseline information as to what all the specific advantages are for the town. So, you know, the traffic studies, just, you know, all those things. Making that information available to these boards in terms of framing it as, we have the potential to have all these different things happen. And as you noted, that they demand less services than a residential property does, because you're not educating, other than if they potentially become residents of the town, employees or owners of these businesses. But note to what should be happening, given all the positives that we have, that we're blessed with, that there should be more activity at these boards than we currently have. And in some ways, either through Lakes Region Planning Commission or whoever is helping to help people to understand what their role should be, not what the role that they perceive is. and understanding who they really owe their obligations to, and that's the current taxpayers to, number one, make sure that the regulations that the town voted on are reasonably enforced or followed, and at the same time, not be looked at as a hindrance and a deterrent, a gatekeeper for potential new businesses or expanding businesses.
When is this joint meeting coming up?
Tomorrow.
I don't have any problem whatsoever. You two are gonna be there representing the different boards?
I have to work.
Okay, so, I don't have any problem whatsoever trying to go and have that conversation. It may be somewhat like trying to herd cats, but I don't have a problem in the world going and having
I
that
intend
conversation.
on going and observing, and if need be, asking questions and making recommendations, something like that, because I'm constrained with my time, with obligations that I have, so I can't get to a number of these meetings because I'm working at other meetings in other towns. But I just look at, we've got to at least try to start to change the mindset. And if we don't change the mindset of the board members, that we do enough education, that we get the townspeople to realize what is going on and understand it, and correct, and realizing that why we have an economic uptick or staying steady, not going downhill, that we should try to take advantage of that and trying to diversify what is available here in town for potential employment opportunities and diversifying the tax base.
I think it's long overdue that mindset changes, especially with the new tax increase for the school. I mean, our town taxes are not expensive. It's not that.
And going down.
But they're going down, right? But probably 15, 20 years ago, people were like, oh, our taxes won't go over 12,000. Oh, they won't go over 14,000. Oh, they won't go over 18,000. I'm one for patterns and data. If we don't do this, people are going to leave this town, and I see businesses going with it. And it's imperative that we see a little bit into the future and try to grab onto some of this spread of the tax base. It's super important. Otherwise, it could be $1.33 next year.
Absolutely.
We have no control over that.
And this is partly for my coming here, is to try to maybe have the selectmen be maybe a little more vocal in terms of some of these things, not in like chastising them, but saying, look, we have an opportunity. These are the positives that we can bring to the town. If we can bring these extra businesses in, what can you guys do to help the process so that people feel they're getting a fair shot at getting something versus they feel like they're being discouraged.
I don't have a problem.
They're elected board.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem in the world trying, again, it may well be like herding cats, to try to influence the way that they think.
But if you're saying things that show up in the newspaper, they show up on videos,
Yep.
things like that, and more and more townspeople hear that there are people who are trying to do things, well, then they're gonna look towards these boards if things are not happening and try to hold them accountable, responsible, so that maybe.
I can only tell you, I hope that would be the case.
correct.
Historically, I mean, we go through this every year.
Yeah.
We have vacant seats on boards, begging people to get involved and to throw the hat in the ring. When I make the comment, we get the government we deserve, it's because collectively we are not filling those boards. And in some cases, we're not filling those boards with people who are reasonable. You're asking these folks to sit on a board that requires judgment, tact. I don't have to say any more on that subject, on that part of it, but people need to get involved. And we beg all the time with these vacancies.
So we might encourage some people, if we're having the conversation, so that they hear that there's maybe some movement that they feel that they can be involved with instead of being discouraged by.
I'm all for it, and I don't mind. I'll
Thank you.
definitely, willing we have to do the times, because there's still time to post Because if if more than one of us is gonna be there, it's gonna be a legal meeting for us. So if you can post it, that we'll be in session tomorrow. What time's the meeting?
7.
7 at the Freight House?
7 Freight House.
Okay. If you want to post that, and then we'll be there, see what happens.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. I'm the representative to the planning board, new at it. I go home from those meetings at night. First night, I said to my husband, do not even speak to me. I was in such a frame of mind. I was in shock, I still am. The way these people that come in to build are treated, I'm in shock. And I'm new enough, I guess maybe it's an excuse. I haven't really spoken up yet, but it's coming. I can't believe the way these people get treated when they come into these boards. It's just unbelievable.
I ended up sitting on the planning board last year, and Sam was absent for 2 or 3 meetings, and I was very vocal. I did speak up, and I literally told them that they couldn't imagine how happy I was that I was only visiting, because there was no way on earth I could meet with that board every 2 weeks without killing somebody.
Yeah.
It was the most horrendous thing I've ever participated in the public domain. And I say that, I said it to them, I'm not saying anything I haven't said to their face, because they heard me very clearly. It was awful.
They had a guy come in here, you might have been there, Ash. He had 2 different business proposals. He hadn't bought the land, or he was just here to look to see how it would work. The way he treated him, I haven't seen him back, and I don't expect to see him back.
No, in fact, one of the board members deterred him and said, you know, we have so many of those businesses here in town. Why, you understand that, right? And I point of order and said, it's not your job to tell him whether or not to start a business here. I mean, it's inappropriate.
Just in their first meeting with the planning board. I'm sure the guy walked out of there thinking, not here,
Yeah.
not developing here.
I can honestly tell you it's my pride for this town is the only reason I keep showing up.
Anyway, it's not on deaf ears, we are well aware of the problems that are there. How much we can change it, I guess time will tell. So,
Correct, you can give it an
Ash,
Honest, are we done with that conflict?
I guess,
I just wanted to, on another note, I wasn't around last Monday, but you read our letter, I understand, and there were a few other items in that letter that I guess you might want me to show up and kind of explain a little bit of what I was asking about.
yes.
Is that
We
correct?
did the economic development redevelopment zone. We were familiar with them as we had one
Yep.
already, two already.
Yep.
We took a vote to establish the one in West Ossipee. The IT
The TIF?
TIF and the other one, it's not that we're against them, I'm not familiar with them. And if you could just give us a thumbnail of what they are and how they work.
Sure. So there's 2. There's the TIF district, and then there's the opportunity zone.
Yep.
Going with the newest first, the opportunity zone is something that Governor Sununu put into place roughly late April, early May. And essentially what it is, it's federal dollars that it was part of the, do you recall, Ed, what it's called? It's the tax, there's like something.
The tax credit?
Yeah, a new tax act that was approved this spring. Anyway, from Trump. And the governor was able to pick out, I think it was 27 zones, areas that are rural, low income, so on and so forth, to spark revitalization. And they're able to funnel dollars into those opportunity zones through the state. And all I was asking for is to have the Board of Selectmen research those items, because ultimately it would be you asking for them if it's something that this board is interested in.
Are we in one of those zones?
We are not, and it blows my mind that Conway is, but they are. I'm guessing they had some lobby in there, but I think it's something that would work really well here. And if you don't mind me pulling out my phone, because I don't want to misspeak. Let's see. So the Opportunity Zone, if you don't mind me reading this, it was established by Congress in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 to encourage long-term investments in low-income urban and rural communities nationwide. In talking with Bino LeMontagne, our representative of the economic development of the state, he seems to think that with the right amount of lobbying and opportunity, we can actually pull a little bit of that our way and create our own opportunity zone. Whether it's West, I would think West Ossipee would be the best opportunity for that, just because of the commercialization that's already there. Provides a tax incentive for investors to reinvest their unrealized capital gains into opportunity funds that are dedicated to investing into opportunity zones, designated by the chief executives of every U.S. state and territory. So it would definitely be the governor that would be the one we would want to talk to or write a letter to or what have you to ask if that opportunity exists here. We can make that happen. It wasn't really for you guys to apply for. It was more, let's do a little research because it's a great thing for rural development or economic development rather. I did forward the link to Ellen today, just so you can read up on it a little bit more, rather than read off the entire thing here. But I believe I was just asking for you folks to research it. The other thing was the TIF district, and the way this works, again, it's state, but there would be a little bit of work, legwork on our part here in the town political level, government level. So it's the concept of TIF is relatively simple. Property tax revenue generated within an established TIF district is split into two components. The first is the property tax revenue based upon the original assessed value within the district boundary as of the date the district was formed. The second is the incremental or increased property tax revenue that is based upon the difference between the current assessed value of the new or redeveloped properties in the TIF district. This is known as captured asset assessed value, meaning that the incremental amount of property taxes generated from the increase in property values as a result of capital improvements are there retained to pay the TIF debt service and other operating costs.
How is that different, Ashton, than the one that we adopted?
Sure. So what that is just a 50% reduction in new or capital improved properties. This is where all of the properties inside of a TIF district, all of those taxes get split. So there's actually similar to an investment fund for more capital improvement.
Well, when you say the taxes get split, whose taxes?
It would be all the property taxes in there. It wouldn't change anything on their part. It would just be how we manage those dollars.
You lost me.
Okay.
Go back to explaining the difference. It's the difference between what and what is that amount.
So, I'm a little lost there on that. But here's a real world example. They actually give one. This is from the Municipal Association. According to the report filed by the Town of Enfield's Tax Increment Finance Committee, the original assessed value of property in their TIF district was approximately $32 million in 2009. As a result, in part of the water sewer improvements completed under the TIF plan, the current assessed value of those properties in 2015 was approximately $44 million, resulting in an incremental increase, the retained captured assessed value of $12 million. Based upon their 2015 property tax rate, this incremental assessed value generated $303,843 in tax revenue retained for TIF district expenses, so be able to use them towards infrastructure. Well in excess of what is needed to make the annual debt payment of $162,000 on those infrastructure improvements, in their case, the water and sewer lines. It's very important to note that a TIF assessment is significantly different from a betterment assessment. With a betterment assessment, certain properties are assessed an amount in addition to the regular property tax assessment, resulting in additional taxes. With a TIF assessment, there's no additional amount charged to the properties within the TIF district. The taxes are based upon the most recent assessed value of the properties times the current property tax rate. Just lost my spot, sorry. Just like all other properties within the municipality. However, when tax revenue is received from properties within the TIF district, it ends up in two different places. Some to the general fund based upon the original assessed value, and some to the TIF fund based upon the incremental assessed value. Taxpayers within a TIF district see no difference in their property tax bills than they would otherwise. The primary benefit of TIF is it's used to promote economic development by providing a financing option to fund infrastructure improvements for which it might otherwise be challenging to garner legislative body approval. TIF allows a municipality to use the property tax revenue generated from the new or refurbished development to pay for the infrastructure improvements that were necessary to incentivize the construction of those new or refurbished properties. It goes on, and I did send it to you.
Okay, so there's virtually then no, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no direct benefit then to any business or anybody that's in within that district.
No.
They're gonna pay the same amount of taxes.
It's beneficial for the town. They'll pay the same amount of taxes. It's just how the town manages those funds.
Okay.
And those funds that are pulled off for that TIF would be utilized for infrastructural improvements in those communities. So we're lucky we had $65,000, $70,000 sitting in a pool on a line for sidewalks.
Yeah.
If we didn't have that and we had a TIF district, you'd actually already have a fund.
But with those TIF districts, would those TIF funds only be allowed to be spent within that particular TIF district?
I believe so, because it would be based solely on the properties in that TIF district.
So how do you determine where that zone is?
Well, you said
That's where
it.
it would fall on this board, you know, and in conversation amongst other boards.
Yep.
I think there is some great benefit to that, especially for the town to fund future capital improvements, infrastructure.
I do, if, believe me when I say I don't want to be defeatist to this, but I do, if there can be some discussions about what you think the infrastructure needs are going to be for that particular area. And I'm just using water lines as an example. We have a water system here in Center Ossipee, and if the desire was going to be that you're going to create a TIF district in West Ossipee, and that as part of the overall plan you want to put in a public water source, then I think that TIF program makes an awful lot of sense, because you're starting to bank money around on the side in order to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I guess my concern is, otherwise you could end up with 3 or 4 TIF districts. But if you can only spend the money in that particular district that's raised from that district, I just think it becomes very confusing.
Well, I think your water and sewer, sure, that's certainly a benefit. I think looking forward into the future where you have commercialization there a little bit more, ultimately you're going to want sidewalks. You're going to want better lighting. You know, just for ease of accessibility. I mean, kids are walking on the highway down there, and maybe you have designated sidewalks. So if you see something like that in the future, amongst other things, I'm just on the spot here, but you can plan for that in a much different way versus trying to raise the funds from the whole town, because the whole town doesn't like to pay for our water and sewer. We've had that conversation. So it allows you to localize those funds coming off the properties that are solely there. And you'd be able to essentially invest by having it separated and spend those dollars a little bit differently for that district.
Which with that in mind, it might make some sense to look at the TIF districts along the same boundaries as your precincts. If you wanted to more localize your spending into a particular area to combat exactly what you're talking about, which has always been the case. The folks in Center Ossipee don't want to pay for the fire department in West Ossipee, and West Ossipee doesn't want to pay in Ossipee Corner. If you did the TIF districts and broke them down by precinct, then you could more localize those funds to be used in that particular area. I still going to go back to, I think, before you do that, you have to at least have, and I realize that you're talking about some crystal ball stuff, you would at least at least start to say, these are the things that we see as potential needs infrastructure-wise, because otherwise, I don't want to see us build funds for the sake of building funds. You could end up with 3 TIF districts that each have, millions of dollars sitting in an account that's not being utilized. I think that's just, then you end up, what have you done?
Well, I think ultimately that's where the strategic plan of this town needs to come into place. I mean, that's an easy answer in my eyes, because I think the people that are vested here or have lived here a long, long time have visions of what certain areas should or would look like. And if, I hate to say it, I love what our town looks like now, but it could look so much better. I love how our town looks now, but it could be so much more accessible to walking communities or riding your bike or whatever it could be. And these are all things that are coming out as we've done our research and doing some data pulling with the Envision Nights and stuff with the EDC. This is a different way to look at it. And I know there's a comfort in, well, we could do $50,000 a year as a capital improvement line item. We did that with sidewalks, and that money sat there for 10 years anyway. So I see that as a bit moot as long as we know where we want it to be.
And I don't disagree, except one of the ways that we have been able to keep and control the local tax rate and actually have it go down over the last 4 years is to control your spending to grow at a slower rate than what your revenues do. What you're talking about doing in a TIF district, unless I'm mistaken, is you're talking about taking many of those increases in revenue that we have currently been experiencing and enjoying and reaping the benefits of. You're talking about taking some of those and setting them aside. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but when you do that, then you take that revenue away from the ability to stabilize and lower your tax rate. I mean, at the end of the day, 1 and 1 still have to add up to 2.
Sure, but again, I think the research should be done by this board. I think that.
Oh, I'm not saying I'm against it. These are the things that are coming off of my head as to the possible ramifications.
There's also that past evaluation to current evaluation. And it's the difference of those two. It's not the actual base taxes that you're already paying the bills with.
Correct.
So that doesn't change. It's the difference.
But see, that difference is what makes the difference. I mean, in all fairness, we have not lowered a single loss. Our budget hasn't gone down in order to make our tax rate go down. We have simply controlled the growth to grow at a slower rate than the revenues. So part of what we've been reaping the benefit of, so to speak, on our property tax is the fact that businesses have been built, people have added on. All of those increases in revenue help to more than offsetting the increases in the budget. That's why we've been able to do the tax rate. If you take much of them and set it aside, and again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but then that removes that from that ability to be applied to the rest of the budget. It just does. I just want to, I just want to toss it out there. I think we need to look at how, we need to look at what benefit there is, and there may be, in fact, a couple of downfalls to it too. That's all.
Sure. I was just asking this board to look into it.
Oh, yeah, no, I got no issue with that.
Both links are in Helen's email.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll forward those on.
Okay.
as well. Otherwise, I just want to thank you for pushing forward with the hearings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not, believe me when I say I'm not on its face against you. I just got some questions. So. Anybody else under public input? If not, we'll do the red folder quickly. We have the corrected minutes. The one we signed before were still in draft form, but these are the minutes of the Selectmen's meeting which occurred on Monday, July 16th. I make a motion we accept them as printed. All in favor? Aye. We have the minutes of the Selectmen's work session which occurred on Monday, July 30th. I make a motion we accept them as printed. You were there.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have the minutes of the Selectmen's meeting which occurred on Monday, July 30th. I make a motion we accept them as printed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have the payroll reimbursement request from Water and Sewer in the amount of $3,545.66. I make a motion we approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. May seem like we blow right through this stuff, but we've all independently had a chance to review everything prior to the meeting. These are the check voucher totals. Payroll with benefits for week ending 8/4 was $156,606.97. We had accounts payable for week ending 7/30 in the amount of $37,520.61, for a total disbursed of $194,127.58. Additionally, we had water and sewer accounts payable, which we track separately, in the amount of $4,884.69. I make a motion we sign. All in favor? Aye. Again, these are just the check voucher totals. There is a multi-tiered review of every bill that comes in, including that every one of them is initialed by each one of the board members here individually before it gets to this stage. A memo from Brad. This is on the Whittier Covered Bridge right-of-way certificate. I mentioned it last week's meeting. The family which owns property beside the Whittier Covered Bridge requires an easement for access to the river for restoration. One of the brothers who shares ownership of the property is supposedly visiting from Florida this weekend and was going to sign the easement. Anticipate having that document this week, and we'll need to send in the right-of-way certificate with a copy of the easement. The certificate can either be signed by the chairman of the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator/manager. I'd like to have Ellen be allowed to sign the certificate. This will allow us to send it in as soon as the easement document is received. I have no problem with that. I make a motion that we have Ellen authorized, is the authorized signer for this right-of-way certificate.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Duncan Lake Beach, Brad Harriman. The permit by notification will be ready to go out after Wednesday's Conservation Commission meeting. After speaking with Ellen, we determined that I should be appointed as the agent, which will allow me to sign and correspond with DES on behalf of the town on this application. Having this in the minutes, it will all be needed confirmation. This is what we're trying to do, is get permission to take in some wash beach sand onto our beach at Duncan Lake. I make a motion that Brad Harriman be our appointed agent for this DES application. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We have a land use change tax. This is on Old Rochester Road. No, Fogs Ridge, you're right. It's 125 Fogs Ridge Road. It's a land use change tax. I make a motion we sign.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And this is for, I believe, that same piece of property. This is the warrant for collecting the taxes on a current use land. I make a motion we sign. All in favor? Aye. We have a petition and poll license. This is from Public Service for poles they're replacing on Ridge Road. I make a motion we sign. All in favor? Aye. We have a copy of a check we received from the state of New Hampshire for $5,775. Any idea what that's from? It says WTR.
Water filtration grant.
All right, water filtration grant. Very good. We have the meeting, 2018-2019 schedule for the Governor Wentworth School Board meetings. It's here in the folder if anybody'd like to look at it. The next one is August 9th, and it's at Brookfield. We received sealed bids last week on the 3 vehicles that we had for surplus vehicles that we had for sale. Brad compiled them for us. The winning bid on the 2004 F-350 was $1,111.11 from Ricker Auto Salvage. 2012 Impala was $350 to a Jacqueline Broza. And the 2013 Chevy Impala was $326.50 to a Matt Scruton. I make a motion that we instruct the town administrator to convey the vehicles for that price.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
And there are attached bills of sales attached.
Huh?
Those bills are sale.
Bills
Oh.
of sales are attached.
Sorry.
Fine.
We have a copy of a letter that we were carbon copied from the town of Tamworth to our ambulance provider with some complaints they had about their service. It's here in the folder if anybody would like to look at it. We have a notice of public hearing. This is for the I don't know if it's the planning board or the,
Should say up in the letterhead.
no, I don't.
Which one's that?
For
Should publish for variance.
that's for variance. They need to do better stationery that actually shows what board it's coming from in this.
Yeah.
It's a public hearing anyway tomorrow night, August 14th at the Freight House regarding case number 18-10-B. Ash, I think it's something to do with you, actually, White Mountain. Anyway. Which board is it?
That's zoning board.
Okay.
variance.
We received a check for $518.75 for scrap metal. The Highway Department work log is here in the folder if anybody'd like to look at it. The recycling facility cash log showed we collect $7,764.45 in the month of July. This is a letter that we received through our website, I guess. These folks, please include any, let me see. Hello, my wife and I, along with two friends, were traveling through your town of Ossipee on Sunday, July 1st, the first day of our vacation in Nova Scotia. We were unfortunately sideswiped by another motorist, resulting in both cars being totaled. Fortunately, all parties involved escaped without injury. We were totally amazed at the quick response, courtesy, and professionalism of your emergency service team members and the police officers during this stressful time. We wanted to send our gratitude to your wonderful crew. We also wanted to acknowledge many of your community members who offered assistance and graciously offered to personally transport us to Portland, where we were able to obtain a rental car and still catch the cat boat to Nova Scotia. Please send our thanks to your community. Sincerely, Mark and Lisa Hodge from Vermont. Very nice letter. I don't know where this occurred. Might make sure that the PD gets a copy of this and then find out where, I'm not sure what precinct this accident occurred in, so make sure and get that conveyed to them as well. The water and sewer, we have a water and sewer warrant to allow the tax collector to collect $75. I make a motion, we approve it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a water and sewer warrant to allow the tax collector to collect $40. I make a motion, we sign it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a water and sewer warrant to allow the tax collector to collect $8,562. I make a motion, we sign it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Old business, Boston Post King.
I contacted Engraving Awards and Gifts. The canes have been received. I have 3 of them. They just need to go up there to be engraved, and as soon as they're engraved, we will get a award ceremony scheduled.
Okay. Anything, Brad, on 28-171?
No, nothing on that.
Sidewalks?
Nothing really new to report on that. I didn't receive the maintenance agreement that I was hoping to get last week to have here to sign so we could, move forward with it in the excavation permit. But with that impending approval coming up, I'd like to schedule for a week from tonight a kind of a stakeholders meeting, send out notices to all the abutters along the sidewalk there, invite them to a meeting. Maybe we'll have it right after the selectmen's meeting here at the gym next Monday night. Have the plans present. They can ask any questions, how it affects their properties, and make sure everybody's on board with it all and stuff. So
I think that's fine. I don't know if a week is enough. I mean, is that enough notice?
I don't think we have to really notice that it's.
No, I'm just thinking courtesy wise, so I'll make sure that they're able to be here.
Yeah, if they're buffer, we can do that.
I don't want to slow anything down. I'm just,
I don't really slow it down at all. I think by the time we get all those approvals in place, stuff like that, and get our lined up and scheduled to do it, we'll probably be talking about that time frame anyway, so. Yep.
I'll shoot the week after.
The week after, okay.
Give them a little bit more notice and sure
We'll be a
Yeah.
little less under construction. We'll be a little less under construction at that point.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Transfer station fees, again, we've not, it's still on our schedule. Covered Bridge?
Nothing new other than what I had there tonight on the right-of-way certificate there.
And is that about the last thing that they're waiting on?
That's it. Last thing we're waiting on, and they should give us the approve the funding to go out to bid, and then, that goes along with the funding to proceed with the last phase, so.
When's it gonna be done?
Won't be done until next year, but they will be working on it this year, so. They will be.
I knew I should have bet them a steak dinner. I told them it wasn't gonna be done. They all know it was gonna be done in 2017. Anything else on the old business?
No.
The bridge is gonna be old enough to vote. New business?
No.
So one thing that we had Saturday was our household hazardous waste collection. Went very well considering the weather we had, fairly wet out there and stuff, but having it go through the garage out back there, it works very well because we were able to keep that whole crew inside collecting it and stuff. We were a little low on cars. We had 159 vehicles come through. Usually we're up around the 200 mark, but we did get a lot of stuff off the streets and out of the houses and in where it needs to be. So I think overall it was very successful.
Good. Anything else, anybody under new business? Second public input, anybody, before we finish? Ash?
So now that new water line has been moved, it bypassed essentially my property and went under the bridge up on Moltenville Road. I recently had my property surveyed, and there's a town easement through my property where the old water line was, and I was wondering if the town would be willing to remove that from the deed since there's no water line there anymore.
I can't
Yeah. I doubt-
You would all back, I can't
What-
imagine why we wouldn't.
What steps do I need to take to do that? Do we request a letter form?
Probably something, ask Rick what we probably need,
Yeah, I think-
the attorney, get the documents that we need there to move forward with that.
I know that we registered the registry of deeds.
Right.
And all that, so. Yeah, I guess if, you give us a letter first, asking for us to do it. We'll kick it off to Rick Sager, our town attorney, and just tell him, down the process I'm familiar with, I just don't know how it has to go.
On another note, the Economic Development Council, I was kind of wondering what one might do as a chair to have a special meeting. Is that something that needs to be posted with particular time?
You need for you to call a special meeting to get approved?
For the EDC, yeah.
You're not under the same constraints that we are. We are, by statute, have to notify 24 hours in advance, posting and all of that. You're not under those same constraints that we are. So there's nothing to prevent you from calling a special meeting. The only thing I would say, just from a transparency issue, is, you know, a couple of 3 days notice, try to get it out there as much as anything as you can, and then making sure that all of your members are notified, so that it never gets to a situation where people are saying, well, they had a meeting and I didn't know about it, type of thing. That's all. But there will always be times when there's a reason to deviate from your once a month schedule or whatever it is that you have.
Yeah, so for full transparency, we're gonna have a special meeting tonight.
Okay?
Going forward, if that ever happens again,
Yep.
I would certainly give
Yep.
even a week's notice is
Yeah.
fine.
And that's fine.
And do I notify you as well?
No, I don't, well, you can, but I don't think you need to. I mean, we pretty much have given you that group carte blanche to meet and come up with, you know, we're here waiting for your recommendations of things that we can implement to make this better.
Sure.
So-
So the topic for tonight is discussing an envision night for West Ossipee, much like what we did here for this town of, for Center Ossipee. We're gonna do the same for West Ossipee to try to figure out what people want, what they see, use the crystal ball, and try to figure out what that means to not only West Ossipee residents, but we want town-wide, what would you like West Ossipee to look like? If you had the perfect world. So we're gonna design that again, and I think that meeting's gonna fall somewhere in the first or second week of September. Probably that week after Labor Day, to get past the holiday.
Just keep in mind that there's an election on the second Tuesday in September.
Okay. I will make sure everyone's aware.
You're gonna do it in West Ossipee?
No, I think I'll do a facilities permit. I think we'll do it here like we did before. We got a lot of data from that first one, and I think that if we could do the same, that would be great. And this space is perfect for it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Ed?
I just wanted to ask about the posting requirements. Who actually created the Economic Development Council?
Board of Selectmen.
If that's considered an advisory committee, and under 91A, he still has the same posting requirements as you. So I don't know how you're going to get around that, but you're still supposed to have a 24-hour posting for a meeting. So how are you going to handle that? That's up to you. But that's what 91A says.
That if they're an advisory
They're an
committee?
advisory committee appointed by you.
Okay.
So therefore, they have their own quorum, they have to maintain minutes, and they also have to they're required to post, just as you do, 24 hours in advance.
Okay.
Just so you know that.
Okay.
Right. Didn't know that.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I did have something to add.
Sure.
I met with the Durham Selectmen, New Durham Selectmen, to talk about two things. One, to just have a face-to-face discussing the aspects of having the proposed elected budget committee, which they reiterated that they sent a positive letter back to that aside. I also spoke about the meeting I'm trying to put together of all the selectmen in the property poor towns, because I don't believe Wilkesboro and Tuftonboro were interested. So they also said that it's a good suggestion to go to their budget committee. Since it seems like all the active budget committees in all the towns seem to be active and proactive when it comes to the school board, that they may also want to be included in that combined effort to come together. So what I would like to see is, I'm going to put together some dates to see what would be a good time for the selectmen of New Durham, Brookfield, Ossipee, and Effingham to come together. And I'm also going to visit personally with their budget committees, which are separately elected political subdivisions, and ask them if they would also be interested. And I don't know if it's happened before, but we have to figure out how to post it correctly and have that meeting. So trying to nail down that exact date's tough because everybody's busy, everybody has meetings, so it's going to be tough. But
It is, and it's gonna get worse as the fall goes on, as we get into the budget process. So the only other thing that I would say is, Wilkesboro and Tuftonboro, chose not to be supportive of the idea of an elected budget committee. But I still think they should be invited to this meeting, because my hope is that out of this meeting, we will not only talk about the budget committee, but potentially talk about the change, trying to change the funding formula, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that Tuftonboro and Wolfboro ought to be invited to come to that meeting if it can come to pass.
Correct.
Whether or not they choose to participate is completely, totally up to them, but.
Now, I still have to verify this next issue, but I want to announce it here because I would like other people to try to find the information. One thing I never did is I never went to the minutes of the advisory committee for the school board when they do their finance committee meeting. As I understand, that finance committee works out the details of the budget and then brings it to the main board. Unless I'm missing something, I can't find those minutes. So I have a 91A request in, which they have until I believe Thursday, which is their next meeting, to answer, to find out if they actually have minutes to these finance meetings. Because if they do, fine, I missed it, it's somewhere else and I didn't see it. But if they don't have minutes to those meetings, I believe therein lies some of the problem here, is that I don't know why they would assume they don't need minutes for a finance committee meeting. A $50 million operation, and you don't have minutes to a board that's specifically appointed to put together a budget for this district. So like I said, I have not verified that that is an absolute truth, but I'm looking to substantiate that claim.
But Ed, it even goes, listen, and I applaud that, and I couldn't agree more. However, it even goes a little farther than that. Who's on the finance committee? I don't know. The Boston Tea Party was about pennies. This is $50 million budget. You mean to tell me that every town doesn't have input on the budget? Was it ever discussed in the meeting that the impact of this budget was going to be $1.33 a thousand on a town that can ill afford it? I don't even, was it ever even discussed?
Now, to support at least this part of the school board, the chair, Jack Widmer, says it is an open meeting. It is posted and the public can attend. But this is back to what I said before about getting people involved. No one attends the meetings. So not only was there no, as far as I know, there was no minutes, there was also no public participation in that. There may have been a budget committee member over in Effingham that had went to a few meetings to talk about the formula, but that's it. So this...
When do they have the finance meetings? Are those posted as well?
Actually, if you look on their website, they have their meeting schedule, and it says exactly in 2018 when they're going to have their finance meeting minutes, finance committee. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and then the next one is the deliberative session. So it's there. It's in the public, but it's hard to get people to attend.
It's 4 or 5 meetings?
It's 4 or 5 meetings, and it says on the posting, finance committee, and that's when they meet to talk about the budget. I believe Ernie Brown is on it, Jack Widmer chairs, and I'm not sure who else is on it, but that's the committee that hears it. Now, they bring that information to the main board, and that's where they present it. Last year, the children sung the snowman song, and then they ushered out the budget. That was the process they used. Now, I say that a little bit sarcastically because it's like a bunch of kids are singing the snowman song, and then they talk about the budget. So that didn't, so all those parents left. So it was me and the cable channel over in Wolfboro filming them presenting the budget as a public hearing. So they're following 91A properly, at least up to the point where they're posting the meetings. But again, the public participation is very, very slim.
It's important, but it's also incumbent upon them as elected officials. If what you're saying is that there were 4 meetings to consider a $50 million budget conducted by 2 or 3 people,
Yeah.
how could that remotely be seen as an adequate budget review? I mean, I'm just using what we do here. town of Ossipee is $6 million. We have a 10-member budget committee that spends months calling through all of those facts and figures to make sure that they're presenting a responsible budget to the voters to ultimately vote on in March.
Well, that would be a good public comment, but if the public doesn't show up to comment about how they're doing it, nothing will change. That's just how it is. And I'm not trying to be adversarial about this.
No.
It's the half of the equation in this republic is the public has to be there. The people who are supposed to be electing these people have to be involved in it. And I mentioned in New Durham, that disturbing thing I heard was that many parents don't want to show up because in the property poor towns, they are worried about how their children are talked about or whatever. I'm not saying it's happening, but there's a perception of some parents that they don't want to make waves. Because the kids, and I don't know if it's this kids against kids, I don't think it's administration doing it. I think, the kids see somebody from Ossipee who may be from Wolfboro, and there is a class system inside the school. So the parents are worried about that. They're very cognizant about that. So, but you have to go to the meeting to voice those concerns. I'll be at the Brookfield meeting at 7 o'clock. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to agree with you, Rick. I think it would be good to invite Wolfboro and Tuftsboro to that meeting. Kind of felt the same way. And I think our letter from Wolfboro did state that while we weren't sure about the election budget committee of having much impact, we were more than willing to get together and meet as a group and just see where the discussions go on it and stuff anyway. So
That's exactly why I brought it up, because of the kids who we may at least have some discussion, whether or not something positive could come out of the time of that.
Yep.
So, I agree. Thank you. We else have anything else? If not, I make a motion, we adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, go get my materials and then go.